Hi everybody and welcome. My name is Alison, the online piano and the online violin tutor. Today is a video on helping you choose the correct bow for you. So I get asked a lot of the time, what do I look for when I'm trying to buy a new violin? But I also get asked what do I look for when I'm trying to upgrade to a different bow. So this is a very personal experience when choosing a violin and when choosing a bow, because everybody is completely different, and what I think is fantastic somebody else might think is absolutely rubbish, and vice versa. So it's very personal. So everything that I'm going to say are my personal thoughts, my opinions and my personal preferences. However, I was just thinking that if I gave you some ideas of what I look for, or what I have looked for when I've upgraded my instruments, so upgraded my violin and my bow, then that might at least give you some hints and tips on what exactly to look out for, rather than just going in there and just choosing any violin or any bow at random. There is a separate video, or there will be a separate video on what to look for in a violin or how to choose a violin. So today's video is just simply on choosing the bow. So I've got a selection of 4 bows in front of me. These are just bows that I have just randomly knocking around my house. One of them is my actual bow that I use all the time, and the one that you'll see me in the video using in the videos all the time. And so that's quite an expensive bow. The other bow I've got are just spares, really, you know, just in case anything happens to my actual bow, and I always take a spare bow with me in my case wherever I go, because you never know, and you don't want to end up without having a bow to play with. So the first one of them is my one, which is the one I use, and that's very expensive. The other one is a kind of a medium sort of expensive bow, and the other two are just cheaper bows. So one is like 20 quid and the other one's just a little bit more than that. So they are my spare bows, all apart from one. But I'll just do some demonstrations and I'll give you an idea of what to look for, and hopefully you'll be able to see some differences, because I do have a nice expensive bow in there that I use against some really cheap ones, and that should hopefully give you quite a big kind of gap for you to see the difference when I'm trying out different techniques. So before I actually do some demonstrating for you and I do some playing, I would say the 3 main things that I would be looking for in a bow, and I'd say choosing a bow is so much harder than choosing a violin, because everything is in the sound and the feel more of the violin. The bow is very difficult, but the bow is so important to get right, because it's the thing that's going to be making contact with your violin that you've just spent hours and hours choosing in the shop. And because it's making contact with the violin, obviously it's what kind of contact it's making. So there's no point having a really nice expensive violin and you've got some kind of cheapy bow as you know, playing on it as well, because you're not going to get the most out of the violin, especially if you're moving up into the higher grades, kind of grade 5, 6, 7, 8, and maybe diploma or semi-professional, anything like that. So a bow is very important. So the 3 things that I look for are the weight, the feel and the texture. So the weight of the bow is very important to me, because sometimes they will weigh differently, obviously, but some of them will weigh heavier at the end and lighter at the top, or they will feel heavier in the middle, or they'll feel top heavy and the bottom will feel very light. So really with the weight, it just depends on what you prefer the feel of. So if I were just to pick this one up at random, this one's very heavy, because when I'm holding the bow, it wants to tip down. My hand is having to work very hard, or my little fingers having to work very hard to keep the bow up. So it's very kind of top heavy, it wants to tilt, and my hand's going to work too hard. So if my hand is having to work too hard just to even hold the bow, then I don't want to think what's going to happen when I'm trying to use the different techniques and trying to play pieces with the violin. So this one, for example, is very heavy. The other one that I've got here, this is my medium expensive bow. Now this is very light. This feels very light around this area here. It doesn't want to tip, but in all honesty, I reject this bow simply because it is just, the whole thing is just too light. So it's a bit like Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, really. That one was too heavy. This one is too light, for example. So you'll sort of know straight away when you pick them up whether they, oh, that feels heavy, or, you know, oh, that feels quite light. So the next thing is the feel of them. When I was choosing my bows recently, I was sent 6 or 7 or so bows to choose from. They were all within the budget that I had in mind, but they were all obviously very, very different. And I remember there was one that I instantly rejected just because I didn't like the way my thumb was to go into the bow. It felt ever so bulky, and I couldn't even get my grip properly, so I just completely rejected that, just because I thought, well, even if it is a really nice bow and it does bow very nicely, if I can't get on holding it right, then that's going to be no good. So it has to feel right for you. Everything has to kind of feel in the right place, and my thumb's going to be bigger or smaller than other people's, so my hand is bigger and smaller than other people, so it really just depends on the size of your hand, the way you hold the bow. There are a couple of different bow grips that are going around, so it just completely depends on your hand and the way you hold the bow and things. So that's very important. Moving on to texture. Now that's when I would do most of my playing. So the texture, I mean, as in how does it perform? You know, how does it feel when the bow is hitting the strings and I'm doing the different types of staccato bowing, smooth bowing, fast bowing, loud bowing stuff, all of that kind of stuff. How does that feel? What does it feel like when the bow hits the strings? So what I did, when I was having a rehearsal with my pianist, we were practicing our recital pieces, I took all the bows to his house, and we went through all of our repertoire that we were playing, and I just randomly picked up a few bows every now and then, played a couple of pieces, picked up another bow, played another few pieces, and then I was able to kind of eliminate them through that way, because I was feeling that some were responding well, some weren't, some were working, some weren't. So when you're trying out bows, you really do have to be able to play pieces, or have pieces there ready for you. Take some music with you to the shop so that you can go into a little room and you can have a little play, but you need to play pieces you're familiar with the bow that you have been using, so that you will be able to tell the difference, because you'll find that some bows will be more responsive and less responsive than others. So that's why you need to try out different various types of pieces that range completely differently from each other, and I'll talk about more of that in just a second, so that you can tell the difference there. So if I was trying out for a new bow, I would be choosing pieces or playing pieces that are fast and slow, smooth and staccato pieces, loud and soft pieces, and high and low pieces as well. So pieces that play high up on the string and pieces that play low down on the string, just so I can test the bow out in all different situations. So I don't know, if I just play some pieces for you now, and just cut to the different bows that I'm using, you might be able to hear or see some of the differences as well. So I tested out 4 bows playing Song from a Secret Garden, and I was playing something smooth so that I could hear the sounds that the bow makes on the violin. It sounds so bizarre to say, but I was noticing that every single bow gave a completely different sound from the violin. I honestly have no idea whether you guys will be able to hear that through the camera, just simply because you're going to be losing some of the quality of sound recorded through the camera. But you know, but from where I am, from playing with the violin, from how close my ears are to the violin, or if somebody was sitting in the room, for example, you would hear the difference in texture. Some bows were a lot more powerful, some bows were sweeter, some bows were rougher. The first bow that I tried was the cheapest bow. I could tell it was the cheapest bow because it gave the loudest, most roughest, kind of scratchiest sort of sound. For example, the last bow was the medium priced one, and that was the very light bow. Obviously I do know which one of these bows were, and I would probably blind test these bows so I weren't influenced by the price or the look or the shape of them particularly. But I could tell the last one was very light, so I know that I'm not going to get a very nice sweet kind of sound out of that one because it's too light, therefore it doesn't have enough power to it. So once you've actually chosen a couple of bows that you like the feel of and you like the weight of, then you need to go and do your blind testing. So don't be kind of tricked into kind of looking at it or anything like that, because you've already vetoed the weight and the feel of them anyway. Just go straight ahead and just blind test them. Keep them in the same order so that you know you can compare the sounds, but then you will eventually find one, for example, that sounds really nice. There's one that I particularly liked when I was playing a song from A Secret Garden. Will that be the same one that I like when I play something completely different? So that's what you need to do, and then eventually you'll lower it down to maybe one bow that sounds great playing absolutely everything, and then you know you've nailed it, and then you know you've found your bow. So I'm going to play a small section of a piece from Zardas now. Just to test the bow out, just to see how much power, just to see what it sounds like and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to try out something fast now, something that uses ricochet bowing, actually just so I can test, really give the bow a really good testing on how it has contact with the strings. This is my very lightest bow of all, and I don't really like playing with this a lot often, but actually surprisingly this works much better on this piece than it does on the bow that I actually use. But I think, to be perfectly honest, it doesn't perform as a nice all-rounder, so this would be great to keep if I were doing a lot of pieces like the one I've just played, but really not for pretty much for anything else. hopefully some of that has helped you guys. Really just, it is a personal preference, but the weight of the bow is important, the feel of the bow, and then the texture. So when you're going to the shop and you're trying out a bow, take some music with you that you're familiar with. The same would go if you were trying to choose a violin as well. So take some music that you are familiar with, some different types of music: fast music, slow music, loud music, soft music, high music, low music, staccato music, smooth music, just absolutely everything, until you find one bow that performs perfectly for every single piece. That's how you will know when you have found a bow, because you will find one that is absolutely perfect all round. You might find bows that are perhaps better than that particular one that you've chosen for doing particular things, but there's no point choosing a bow if it's really good at doing staccato stuff but it's absolutely no good at doing anything else. Because then if you were doing a lot of that kind of stuff, then you would, and you were professional, say, you would go and have a separate bow for something like that. I only have one bow that I use for everything. I like the bow that I've got, and it's perfect and it's ideal for me. So go and choose all the different types of bows, have a little play at them, blind test them, that's a really good thing, and then you'll soon find one that sticks out to you and you prefer above the rest. So thanks very much for watching. I really hope that's helped some of you, or at least been helpful a little bit anyway. Please subscribe to my channel if you like my videos and want to see me do more, and I'll catch you all next time.